Shortly after midnight, Derek Harris marched into the dining room of our Ridgewood home, the air around him tense and cold. He dropped a thick stack of papers onto the polished oak table with a loud thud, startling the silence that had settled into the house hours earlier. "Sign here, here, and here," he barked, jabbing at the pages with his finger like a drill sergeant issuing commands. His tone was clipped and impersonal, colder than I'd ever heard it, like I was a stranger, not Emily Walker, his wife of 12 years. I looked up from my tea eyes, calm, taking in his disheveled appearance. His dark hair was messy, eyes bloodshot, and the faint scent of an unfamiliar floral perfume clung to his jacket, one I didn't own and certainly had never worn. He reeked of guilt and arrogance. "Now, Emily," Derek snapped impatiently, shoving a pen into my hand. "I don't have all night." The dining room, once the warm heart of our family life filled with weekend breakfasts and birthday celebrations, now felt sterile and distant. The overhead light was too bright, casting hard shadows that made it feel more like an interrogation room than the cozy haven it used to be. "You get nothing," he continued, lips curling into a cruel smirk. "No alimony, no house, nothing. You walk out with exactly what you brought in." I took the pen without argument, my expression unreadable, and methodically began to sign each page. He hovered, watching intently, clearly anticipating tears pleading, or at the very least, some spark of resistance. But I gave him none of that. My calm acceptance seemed to throw him off balance. What he didn't realize was that I had been preparing for this exact moment for nearly half a year. I had seen the warning signs, the secretive texts, the locked phone, the abrupt weekend trips. But it was the faint lipstick smear on his collar last spring that cemented my suspicions. That same night, I picked up the phone and called Lauren Mitchell, my closest friend and a sharp-minded financial consultant. The next morning, I met with Ben Carter, the most formidable divorce attorney in Ridgewood. "You're making this too easy," Derek sneered, gathering the documents with a victorious gleam in his eye. I expected a fight. I smiled just faintly as I thought about the sealed folder resting in a safety deposit box downtown, filled with bank statements, screenshots, and all the proof I needed. "Why fight?" I asked, my voice steady and low. "You already made your choice." He paused, visibly thrown by my composure. "Vanessa's different," he muttered, glancing away. "She's ambitious. She's not stuck teaching third graders for the rest of her life." I thought of my students, the classroom I'd built with love, and the careful investments I'd made behind the scenes. I had a solid future mapped out, one Derek would never see coming. "Well," I said simply, rising from the table, "I hope she's everything you were looking for." He didn't answer. Instead, he slipped the papers into his briefcase, already fumbling for his phone, no doubt eager to tell Vanessa that he'd won. At the door, he hesitated, casting a final warning over his shoulder. "Don't do anything stupid, Emily." "Derek," I called gently as he reached for the doorknob. He turned, clearly annoyed. "What?" "You might want to actually read what you just had me sign." He scoffed, his mouth twitching in annoyance. "I know what's in them. I wrote them myself." "Did you?" I asked, tilting my head ever so slightly. "Or did your golf buddy Todd write them?" The color drained from his face. "How did you?" "Good night, Derek," I said softly, turning toward the kettle to make tea. A moment later, the front door slammed with a force that rattled the floorboards. I leaned against the counter, inhaling deeply as a wave of peace settled over me. He thought he'd played me, but Derek never saw my quiet counterstrike coming. His so-called legal expert Todd had made some glaringly stupid errors. Ben caught them immediately. Those papers Derek forced on me. They weren't divorce papers at all. I pulled out my phone and typed a quick message to Lauren. "It's done." He took the bait. Then I messaged Ben Faze, 2 starts now. By sunrise, Derek would find out just how much he'd underestimated me. By 8 o'clock that morning, Lauren Mitchell arrived at my front door, precisely on time, as always, her tailored coat catching the crisp breeze that slipped through Ridgewood's awakening streets. She carried her laptop with a sense of calm precision, like a surgeon ready for an operation. The moment I opened the door, her eyes landed on the glowing phone in my hand, still buzzing intermittently on the counter with a frenzy of messages. A half smile played at the corners of her mouth, her expression both amused and knowing. "How are you holding up?" she asked gently, stepping inside with a practiced grace, her gaze flicking toward the clutter of panicked text previews flashing across my screen, Derek's name appearing again and again like a broken record of regret. I exhaled slowly, lifting the phone and holding it out for her to see. Better than Derek, I'd imagine. Lauren laughed softly, the sound carrying the dry satisfaction of a plan unfolding just as intended. "He's already called Ben's office. Twice. Completely unhinged." At exactly 8:30, as if summoned by the weight of his own consequences, the doorbell rang with a sharp, urgent chime. I didn't flinch. I had expected this moment, dressed it in every shade of possibility in my mind. Still in the same wrinkled clothes from the night before, Derek Harris stood on my porch, his once commanding posture now sagging under the weight of confusion and rising panic. His eyes were wide, bloodshot, desperate. "What the hell did you make me sign?" He blurted out, his breath-short chest heaving as if he had run the whole way across town. "Come in," I said evenly, stepping aside and gesturing toward the dining room. "Let's talk it through over coffee." He stepped in cautiously, like a man walking into enemy territory. The moment he saw Lauren seated at the kitchen table, her laptop already open and a file beside her, he stumbled mid-step. His eyes darted to mine, then back to her. "Who is she?" he asked, suspicion hardening his tone. Lauren stood and extended a hand with professional ease. "Lauren Mitchell, senior paralegal at Carter & Lawson LLP. His face blanched as recognition struck. "Ben Carter's firm," he whispered, barely able to get the words out. "The very same," I said softly, gesturing once more. "Would you like coffee?" He ignored the offer, nearly yanking the briefcase from his shoulder as he pulled out the pages I had signed the night before. With dramatic fury, he slammed them onto the table. "These aren't the divorce papers Todd gave me. You switched them." "No, Derek," I replied, my voice even almost pitying. "They're the exact papers you brought in that briefcase. You just never took the time to read them. You were too busy texting Vanessa." Lauren, without so much as blinking, turned her laptop toward him. "Mr. Harris, let's go over exactly what you've signed." She clicked, and the screen lit up with scanned pages bookmarked and annotated. Page 3, 7, and 12. Your signature authorizes the full transfer of all jointly held assets into Mrs. Walker's name. In addition here, she tapped gently, you've also affirmed in writing your extramarital affair with Vanessa Green, including a detailed account of dates, locations, and the use of marital funds to support that relationship. Derek's knees gave out beneath him, and he sank heavily into a chair, his face draining of color. This can't be legal," he croaked. "I'll fight it. Todd will back me up." I raised an eyebrow, affecting a tone of mock concern. "You mean your friend Todd, the unlicensed golf buddy currently being investigated for practicing law without a license? That's your legal counsel." "You set me up," he hissed, his voice low and shaking. "No," I said firmly, leaning forward. "You set yourself up, Derek. I just made sure to keep records." Lauren reached into her bag and retrieved another folder, thicker than the last, and laid it neatly on the table with a practiced hand. "We also have video footage of you attempting to coerce Mrs. Walker into signing falsified legal documents in the middle of the night, no less. Our cameras captured the entire exchange." His head jerked up. "What cameras?" I pointed subtly toward the high corner of the kitchen, where a discreet lens blinked quietly above the cabinets. "Funny what you don't notice when you think you're invincible." "Why are you doing this?" he asked, his voice cracking a hint of the man he used to be breaking through. "Is this revenge?" "For protection," I replied, my voice unwavering. "I gave you 12 years, Derek. I supported your dreams, tended to our home, believed in a future we were building together. And you tried to leave me with nothing but my dignity, and not even that if you could help it." Lauren slid one final document set across the table. "These are the real divorce papers, legally sound, fully prepared by Carter & Lawson. The terms are very different from what you imagined." He looked at them but didn't touch. His hands trembled. "I don't have to sign these." I nodded slowly. "You don't. But if you don't, we'll move forward with pressing fraud charges. And Todd? He'll be answering to the state bar as your accomplice." "You can't prove—" "We can," Lauren cut in, turning her screen again. "Texts between you and Todd, video evidence, even drafts of the falsified documents. We have everything. Want to see more?" Derek's shoulders slumped, and for the first time the full weight of his failure landed on him with crushing force. "If this gets out, I'll lose my job." "You should have thought of that," Lauren said briskly, "before you tried to ambush your wife with fraud." I stood arms crossed, watching the man who had once believed he could outwit me with deception and cruelty. "You have 24 hours to consult a real attorney. After that, we proceed with charges." He gathered the documents, hands unsteady, and moved slowly toward the door. Before stepping out, he turned with a flicker of hesitation. "Emily—" "Save it," I said, cutting him off coldly. "Your 24 hours begin now." When the door finally shut behind him, Lauren turned to me with a victorious glint in her eye. "That went better than I imagined." I sank into the nearest chair, my legs finally giving in after months of silent vigilance. I took a breath so deep it seemed to pull the weight of the past year out of my lungs. Lauren rested a hand gently on my shoulder. You did the right thing. He'd be a fool not to sign. I picked up my phone, the same phone that had vibrated nonstop through the morning. The last message from Derek read simply, "You've changed." No, I whispered to myself. I just stopped pretending I was less than I am. Exactly 23 hours and 12 minutes later, Ben Carter called me as I sat in my classroom, red pen in hand, grading math quizzes under a wall decorated with glittering stars and colorful artwork. He signed. Ben said, a chuckle evident in his voice. He tried negotiating until I reminded him we had him on video trying to fake legal documents. Suddenly, he became very cooperative. I glanced around at the laughter-filled walls, the scent of dry erase markers, and pencil shavings in the air. This so-called dead-end teaching job had given me more meaning than Derek ever could comprehend. "And Vanessa?" I asked, curious. "She wasn't the first," Ben said dryly. "Your documentation was meticulous. She's already cleared her desk." That evening, just as the golden light began to soften the edges of the day, Lauren Mitchell arrived at my doorstep, a bottle of Cabernet tucked beneath one arm and a triumphant smile playing on her lips. The atmosphere in the house felt palpably lighter, the weight of Derek's presence having been lifted piece by piece as I packed away the remnants of his former life. The boxes were nearly filled now, neckties he'd never wear again, cufflinks that gleamed without substance, and framed photos that once clung to a hollow fantasy of togetherness. Lauren joined me on the living room floor, wrapping delicate glassware and stacking his belongings with surgical precision. "Did you hear about Todd?" she asked casually, as she carefully folded bubble wrap around a framed picture of a golf tournament Derek never actually played in. I raised an eyebrow. "No, what now?" "The state bar's investigating him," she replied, her voice laced with quiet satisfaction. "Turns out, you weren't the first woman he tried to scam with counterfeit documents. But you, Emily, you were the first one to beat him at his own game." I sank into the couch, the cushions welcoming me with a tired sigh. My eyes wandered across the room, pausing on the corners where shadows once lingered like ghosts of our marriage. I thought of how different everything might have been if I hadn't seen that faint lipstick mark, if I hadn't picked up the phone that night to call Lauren, or if I had stayed quiet and compliant, the dutiful wife Derek always assumed I would remain. "You know what's funny?" I murmured, swirling the wine in my glass, watching it catch the light. "Derek used to say I was awful with details. That's why, according to him, I'd never be anything more than a third-grade teacher. Not someone successful like him." I took a slow sip, letting the irony settle on my tongue. But it was my attention to detail that destroyed him. A week later, as if the universe had heard my whispered truth and chose to affirm it, an unexpected email landed in my inbox. It was from the HR director at Derek's firm, a curt but formal message detailing how the board had reviewed extensive evidence of misconduct, including the attempt to coerce me into surrendering my rights under duress. "Your meticulous records," the email read, "have been invaluable. We are now conducting a comprehensive audit of his department." His position as chief financial officer had been deemed untenable. I forwarded it to Ben Carter, who responded with a single gratifying line. "Sometimes the best revenge is simply being thorough." 3 months passed in steady healing rhythms. The divorce was finalized clean and decisive. I retained the Ridgewood home, half of Derek's pension, and most importantly, my dignity. Derek, stripped of his former title and esteem, moved to a smaller city, taking up a modest position at a lesser-known firm. His once pristine reputation lay in tatters, sullied not just by scandal, but by his own hubris. One day, a message from Vanessa Green appeared in my inbox. It was short, an attempt to explain herself, perhaps even to apologize. I replied simply, without malice. "The security footage showed your side clearly enough. She never reached out again." Exactly 1 year after that stormy night when Derek dropped his deception onto my dining table, I found myself seated at that same spot. But the space had changed. It belonged wholly to me now. I had redecorated everything. Gone were the cold, curated aesthetics Derek had once insisted upon. In their place were warm tones, shelves lined with my favorite books and houseplants that thrived in morning sun. That evening, Lauren returned for dinner. She arrived with a small box wrapped neatly in bronze paper, a mischievous twinkle in her eye. "Happy Independence Day," she said with a smile that echoed far beyond fireworks. I unwrapped the package slowly, curiosity giving way to surprise. Inside was a framed photograph, an image captured from the security camera above the kitchen cabinet. It was Derek mid-gesture, pushing a stack of false legal documents across the table, his expression smug and oblivious. A reminder, Lauren said, her voice rich with quiet pride, that sometimes the best defense is letting your opponent think they're winning. I laughed softly, tears threatening behind the amusement. The photo found its place in my home office beside my framed teaching certificates, and a handwritten note from a student that read, "Thank you for believing in me." That simple note, scrawled in purple marker, reminded me daily that strength wasn't always loud or combative. It could live in patience and presence in choosing not to yield. The previous week, I'd run into Carol Harris, Derek's mother, while shopping at the local market. She paused when she saw me, unsure whether to turn away or offer polite conversation. I decided for her. "Hi, Carol," I said warmly, offering her the grace her son had never earned. She nodded stiffly. "I heard you were promoted," she said, avoiding eye contact. "Director of Academic Programs now," I confirmed with a smile. "Turns out paying attention to detail has its place in education after all." Her posture shifted slightly, her lips softening as if some weight had been lifted. "Derek, he's not doing well. Vanessa left him. For someone more successful." I nodded slowly. "That's unfortunate," I said honestly. "I hope he learns something from it." As I walked away, I heard her whisper so quietly, she might not have meant me to hear, "We all underestimated you." That night, a message lit up my phone. It was from an unfamiliar number. "I'm sorry," it read. "I should have appreciated what I had." It was Derek. I stared at the words, remembering the man who had stood in my kitchen, arrogant and sure, thinking he would leave me with nothing. Slowly, I typed my reply, "Thank you for the apology. But you were wrong. I didn't end up with nothing, I got myself back." Then I blocked the number, poured a glass of wine, and stepped onto the back porch. The evening sky stretched above me, painted in broad, magnificent strokes of pink, orange, and indigo. I settled into my favorite chair and let the silence soothe me. Victory, I had learned, didn't always roar. Sometimes it whispered through careful planning, through patience, through the quiet refusal to be broken. Derek's greatest misstep had never been the affair or the deception. It had been underestimating the strength of a woman who had once loved him and who now knew better. If my story touched something inside you, I invite you to share your own truth. We've all faced betrayal, doubt, or that moment when someone tried to diminish our worth. Tell me in the comments what part of this story felt like yours. What have you learned from your journey? And if you're still finding your strength, let this be your reminder you are not alone. Your words could be the light someone else needs to see. Speak them. And if you found courage here, subscribe, share this, and help others rise too. Strength grows when it's shared. Let's stand together in resilience and wisdom, and in the quiet power that lives within us all.